Welcome to the Outer Realm with myself, Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano. Good evening, everybody. We are broadcasting live here on the UFO Paranormal Radio Network this evening, 107.7 FM and 105.3 FM, live in New Orleans. Tonight, we will welcome Shawn Williamson to the show, and we'll be discussing everything Templar. And oh my God, this guy is so versed. You're going to love him. It is our Templar week, so it's going to be great. But in order to participate in the show, you will need to pop over to UFO Paranormal Radio Network page on YouTube if you want to interact directly with us. Otherwise, we are streaming across 8 different video platforms, and you can find them on any of the network's Facebook pages. And please feel free to go in there and chat it up. We will not be able to respond unless we do it verbally, however. But the good news is you are right here on the soundboard, and even our guests will be able to see your comments. So get yourselves all settled in and get ready for a stupendous show with Shawn. So hey, Zach man, always nice to see you.
Hey,
Hoo-hoo. So here we are. How's it going, Bubbly?
Okay, how are you?
I'm happening.
That's pretty much it.
I'm here, bells on and all. One of my favorite topics.
Yeah, yep. I know.
So
it's a great. I'm just sharing up.
You're sharing the link.
Yeah, that's why I'm like a little bit.
Hey Wayne, how's it going? Okay, I'm just waiting on that so we can get all these links posted. So I have had a lot of people asking me about the links tonight. So please just go on to Outer Realm group page, Amelia's personal page, my personal page, Canada's Most Haunted personal page. There's all kinds of places that you can access it. Again, any Joe Montaldo, United Public Radio, you'll be able to get all of that. So live link to the show, add to profile. There we are. Okay, I've done my part. There we go.
Canada's Most Haunted, just the group. I don't know what's going on with that.
Oh, I have to go and let that one on too. That's just so bizarre. I don't know what the heck's going on with that. I don't know.
It's so weird because it comes up in my profile with all the groups, but yeah, I can't access it.
You are an admin? I don't know. I got nothing. I got nothing. So all right then. So yes, tonight's show, I cannot wait. So you guys are going to absolutely love Shawn. He is versed. He's got like a bio mile long. So I'm not really sure. Are you going to attempt to?
I'm definitely not going to, because then we're going to give it all away. Did you want me to do that right now?
Yes.
Okay.
He is here waiting. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Shawn Williamson is a sculptor that really touches my heart with my family, and a researcher for Andrew Sinclair returns to USA to search for sacred relics and biblical mysteries. He works as a professional sculptor, mason, with 22 major public commissions to his name, including one huge ram unveiled by His Royal Highness Prince of Wales. Shawn Williamson was a seaman on the Great Lakes and returned to the UK to study architectural carving and stone sculpture. Later, his father, Canadian Captain M.F. Williamson, handed him a copy of Andrew Sinclair's book, The Sword and the Grail. In it, he wrote, "Seek this man out." Synchronicity combined with his gun clan DNA, and soon he was sculptor mason to the clan Sinclair. This is where he discovered more secrets that we're going to share right now. Hello, Shawn. Welcome.
Hey, Shawn.
How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Great.
How are you?
Fabulous. Yeah, excellent. I managed to get a couple of hours sleep for your show, so already.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Shawn is coming to us live from Scotland. So
my favorite country ever.
I know. I love Scotland. I do. If you look to your right, I'm not sure if you can see it from your phone. You'll see the comment section here. That is all the different chats that will come in. So you will be able to see the chats, or there'll be questions which we can relay to you also. So welcome. I've had a lot of people asking me for the link to tonight's show, so people are obviously very interested and excited. So I'm going to ask you about, hence, I guess, humble beginnings. How did you come to be in this amazing research position? What drove you to it, etc.?
Yeah, well, it started really when I just left school in the UK, and my mother and father were separated. My father was on the Great Lakes as a first officer, and she didn't really see a bright future for me in sort of industrialized Britain. And she wrote to my father and said, is there anything you can do for him? And I ended up with a job on the Great Lakes. And he knew I was a kind of, obviously, when you're younger, people are quite straightforward and stuff. And he said, oh, just tell them at the customs that you've got a job and all the rest of it. And I did. Well, of course, I hadn't. But within 2 weeks, I was on the Great Lakes as a very young seaman, and going all over, right, through to Lake Superior and stuff. And it was just an awesome adventure, like something out of a novel. I couldn't believe it. And I think that was all just, in the same frame of mind as the great explorer Mitchell Hedges. Just get on and do something exciting with your life. And, you never know where it's going to lead. And this seemed to channel me into an area where I later found out that a lot of my relatives had been over in Canada. One, for instance, was a tailor in the Wars of Independence from Montreal, kind of making uniforms for, actually, I think both sides, and ended up going back to the UK. So it was like I seemed to be tracing this line or areas where my family had gone previously. And it just went on further and further and further and further back. Although you didn't realize what was happening at the time. I was kind of too young, but I started reading books on the Knights Templar, and that was my main area of interest, where I kind of re-educated myself. And I ended up going to a community college in Canada and studying medieval literature. And I did really well at these subjects. And I was thinking, well, how did this not happen in the UK? It was some kind of DNA recycling or going back in time somehow, but
like an imprinting on you almost.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Right. So you just found your calling and decided to pursue it. So at what point did you go from college? Did you stay in Canada for a long period of time? Did you decide to head home?
Well, I stayed in Canada for 4 years, and I was based in Canada, although I went right down the eastern seaboard to New Orleans, Gulf of Mexico. Paid off there actually on the last ship that I was on, which was the Cape Breton Miner. And so my father was interested in the voyages and journeys of Prince Henry Sinclair, and I remember him talking about Frederick Pohl's book on the Sinclair journeys to North America, 1398, pre-Columbus. And I got hooked into this because the books were already around. And then, my thing that I wanted to be was I wanted to work with stone and be a sculptor. The first experience I had carving stone was actually on a ship called the SS Canadian Hunter, and there was a native guy on the vessel that kind of, I was 17, 18. No, I think I was 19 at the time, but he kind of looked after me. It was kind of rough, and he took me uptown in Thunder Bay, and we bought some soapstone.
That's far up there.
That's cold.
Yeah.
And it's cold.
And so that was the first stone carving experience I had. And then I returned actually with a Canadian girlfriend, and we went to Weymouth Technical College, which is the foremost carving college in the UK, where I learned sculpture and architectural carving. And, so the journey went through almost like rather than an academic, cerebral way, it went from tracing ancestry really through being an operative stone carver, stone sculptor, and stone mason, And that's how I kind of worked with Andrew Sinclair. He was obviously, with him being an ex-Oxford and Cambridge professor,
Right.
I was, more on the operative side of things later, analysing what we were asserting were Knight Templar tombstones in Scotland and the north of England,
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, well, that's one of the knights that I carved recently, actually.
One. Yeah, I love this one.
And I've used it for the cover of my novel, Questus, which is out later in the summer.
Oh, excellent. So tell us about the book.
Okay, well, it's actually to do with what Andrew Sinclair found in Rosslyn Chapel, which was
okay,
which is actually on film.
Right.
So he found a wooden grail when he went under into the vaults. He was the only guy really to have done that, and it was like 1993, and they made a film about this kind of semi-illegal investigation, and he came up with this grail bowl on the film. Well, it turns out that I had this bowl analysed, and we're still looking into it in actual fact.
Wow.
But that was the nearest thing to the vaults anybody's found, really. And it seems to be made of a very, very heavy wood. I think it's a lot older than medieval, but even if it was just medieval, it's a great find.
Absolutely.
Because apparently they knights, particularly in Ireland for some reason, had these bowls buried with them in their graves, in their tombs.
Wow.
And there we are with Andrew finding one in the Great Rosslyn Chapel, which is like the temple for all this.
I've been to Rosslyn. It is.
Have you? Yeah.
Oh yeah, so spectacular would be an understatement. It really would. It is truly an amazing place, and you just scan it. You're just inside, and you just scan all around, and there's just so many tales to tell. But I would love to be able to just look at everything and decipher it all just like that. But of course, you lean to the Apprentice's Pillar, which is just like, wow, to say the least. And I think when the movie came out, the Da Vinci Code, it drew a lot of attention to Rosslyn. And everybody heads in there, and they're waiting just to go down underneath and find things. And I like to just say right off the bat, that things like that aren't open to the public. So, I felt bad for one of the poor guides there, trying to explain this to somebody when we were there. She goes, "No, you can't go underneath. There's nothing there for you to see." So
you can't go underneath most cathedrals and sacred places anyways.
No.
Let alone because, Dan Brown sold the script.
Yeah.
Kind of like
well,
that.
I guess that was the monopolization of what other people had been, particularly Sinclair's, had been involved in looking for. You know, I mean, I couldn't believe that I ended up there with them all. And
so tell us how that came to be, Shawn.
Well, it was another sort of weird connection, and it was based on, me wanting to. I was actually kind of in Clan Gun member at the time, and I met a guy from Manchester called Ian Sinclair that knew Tim Wallace Murphy and all these Henry Lincoln, all these big writers at the time, Christopher Knight, and I'd attended a few venues where these guys were with Andrew Sinclair, but there was always a lot of wrangling amongst the Sinclairs and kind of infighting.
Wow.
And there was splits and stuff, and all this stuff was happening, and I kind of stuck with Andrew because I felt like it was predestined, the meeting and all. But it was Ian Sinclair that had Noss Head Lighthouse, sort of kind of sponsored by the Clan Sinclair. And the principal reason for that was to restore the castle. So I was involved in the early days as a consultant with the castles, trying to help the process along. And I was able to connect them to major funding organizations like World Monuments Fund and stuff like that, which, set the castle fundraising to restore it, mainly through donations, although they did get grants as well. And, it was, there's caves under the lighthouse. There's all sorts going on there. I mean, it's just, it was like a sort of a treasure trove for, hunters of the Grail.
I can't even imagine. Tunnels are fun to start with. So you're on your journey. You connect up with Andrew, and what starts from that point? Does he just look at you? Because he must have really liked you to say, "Hey, I'm just going to kind of, put you under my wing and teach you everything, give you, everything that I know." I mean, that's got to be like, that's such an honor.
Yeah, well, Andrew was, he could be very exacting and difficult, but we were very good friends. We with this vast amount of information that he had, sometimes there was areas that I was able to contribute in, like analysis of Templar tombstones and the symbols on them and how they were carved and the techniques. So it was like coming in from another area, to add to what he'd already done. So that was how that worked. But it was we went in all the major churches and some smaller ones and found huge amounts of these, what we call ring cross tombstones. And the point of interest in that is that there seems to be a genesis or type of stone that came based on the symbols that came after the dissolution of the Templars, which is a line of research that I think hints of their continuation in another form. And this is where I think the Sinclairs come in, because one of their official roles in kind of the governance of medieval UK, which was kind of fractured in any case between, the Vikings, the Scottish Celts, the Anglo-Saxons. It was all going in several directions, but they maintained a position as sort of keepers of holy relics. And this seemed to persist after 1312, after the dissolution of the Templars, and that's evidence based from what I've read off, in other books, such as this one, which is a fantastic book. If you can see that, Can you guys?
Yeah, the temple and the lodge.
Yeah, the temple and the lodge. Yeah. So that's a
Okay.
good one. And on these later tombstones, instead of it being a ring cross formed of 4 circles and other devices, it's the actual symbol is almost like a steering wheel or wheel, which we call wheel crosses. And these are the ones that came after, we think, the dissolution, which almost points us to an inner sanctum of Templar purpose that came about after 1312 to continue something that the big Templar organization was looking after, possibly something they found in the Temple of Solomon.
Right. So obviously you shed a lot of light something there's no way. I mean, he never probably would have known, because that's interesting. The stonework. That's I mean, that would be. I mean, you're being, somebody who works with stone. You have an idea where it was probably quarried, where the techniques were. I find that absolutely fascinating, because the stuff is just. I mean, I've seen it all over Europe. Like different places that I've traveled, and if you know where to look, you definitely find it. I was sort of sad to not be able to see it, the stuff at Rennes, because it had a lot of that closed off. There is no more access to be able to go down to see any of the stonework there, unfortunately. So you basically, you're trudging through on your journey, and you are finding all of this amazing information. So where do you go from there?
Yeah, well, I mean, when Andrew Sinclair died, 2019 in May, and it kind of motivated me to put down the research that we'd brought together, and in a paper I've written called Evidence of Knight Templar Tombstones. But there was another curious kind of thing happened with that, because I worked with a really good operative stonemason in Edinburgh called Hugh Douglas. It's funny that he should be from the Douglas clan as well. And, that was 1989. I worked with Hugh in Edinburgh, and a great guy, was also a professional footballer. And he was on a project in Temple Ballantradock, which is the headquarters of the Knights Templar. It's the official HQ of them, and later it goes over to becoming it becomes a hospitaller preceptory when the dissolution of the Templars took place. But Hugh was digging under a wall there and discovered, lo and behold, 3 Knight Templar tombstones.
Wow.
And that's on the official register of Canmore. And so immediately, he and Hugh's kind of testimony is written into the report. But that was the evidence I needed, because there was another tombstone that I was interested in that actually Andrew mentions in his book, The Sword and the Grail, which recently at Loch Awe or at Kilmartin, I was working with, obviously, the famous Lost Relics of the Knights Templar.
Yes.
Carl Cookson and Hamilton White.
Yes. And
we were up there filming, and I was kind of brought in to give an opinion on the stones, and were able to compare the stone that we found amongst these very Norwegian Celtic style tombstones. One of them was exactly the same as the one that Hugh Douglas found at Temple Ballantradock.
Wow, really?
So, yeah, and the link there was that Angus Ogg, who fought for King Robert the Bruce at Bannockburn, brought in 2,000 very, very fierce mercenaries into that battle against the English. And many people have said, were the Templars involved in Bannockburn? Of course, everybody knows that the myths and legends. And so I thought, well, what's a Knight Templar tombstone doing amongst these Nordic Celtic mercenaries from the Western Isles?
Good question.
Exactly, and we've got the proof from Temple Ballantradock, which is in the report, and they're virtually exactly the same, these ring cross type tombstones. And then, of course, another of the conduits of knowledge from France was that when the Templars ran to try and save themselves with, I think they had 50 knights and several baggages of several cartloads of treasure. So it went to La Rochelle. From there, nobody knows where the fleet went. People have asserted that, maybe they went to the Western Isles. Well, this would be evidence of that, I think, that they did. And, there's some kind of connection going on with, the Templars in some role at Bannockburn, because, of course, they were, they'd been dissolved to some extent in the same way that, Robert the Bruce had been also as heretics.
Yes. So
there was an alliance there, I think, of heresy, and sides were being taken. But what did the Templars have on that? We know that they had treasure. Where did it go? Where did it end up? And you can see all these, a path emerging. One thing that's really hard in this life to hide, and that's the truth. And no matter how we contrive history, always the truth will out. And I think we're on a stream of truth here with this. And where whatever the Templars had, which of course we know they excavated the Temple of Solomon, there's records of that.
Yeah.
Where did all this fabulous sacred, that's the important word, is the sacred. It's not the treasure value, it's the sacred, what it represents, where it went. And I think from Scotland, of course, we know they went to Portugal. It's not an area that I've read too much into because I'm really on the Scottish line. And they went to Scotland, and from Scotland, my assumption at the moment is, and there is some evidence to suggest that they went to North America with it. And they knew about North America because the Vikings had already been there. The Vikings had sailed there for 300 or even 400 years prior to when Prince Henry Sinclair's voyage in 1398, was unofficially recorded, shall we say. So, here we go, and we're at first base with this possibility in the USA. And as we know, North America is full of anomalous sites, ancient sites, and nobody knows too much about it. And it's almost as if it's trying to get out, and I think we're on that crest of a wave at the moment with this, where in the direction that we're going from our various, levels of expertise. And I can't really say too much about what the Team Templar project is about, but it joins a lot of the dots, shall we say. And I'm hoping that will, lead to other discoveries as well. But first things first with that's where we start. And and we've definitely got more premium evidence to show the world.
Wow. People they don't really consider that they made it here this far. I think you're just brainwashed by history. Columbus, even though people know that that's definitely not the case. I mean, you know, Kathleen Ann Ball right there, her findings also, you know, suggest otherwise. And I know that the Team Templar North America is really active. You guys are going leaps and bounds. So I'm looking forward to what you guys are going to come up with that. And maybe just get all of you on here and talk about it.
I mean, I you know, I kind of, it was Wayne Murphy that, great guy, you know, that, and fantastic knowledge of his sites and stuff.
Yes.
And Gretchen Cornwell, who everybody knows,
Yes.
you know, fabulous books and stuff. And they were working together, and then they brought me in. And of course, I'm a kind of joiner up of things.
Right. Connect the dots.
You know, connect the dots, yeah. I wouldn't say I don't know whether I'm a kind of a finisher or not, but I'm a really good starter and a good joiner-upper of things. And I was able to bring this to the attention of Carl Cookson and Hamilton White of Lost Relics.
Yeah, they're great guys. They're on again next week. So I like to see everybody connecting up together because there's so much groundbreaking research being done. And of course, you know, it almost seems, it's like I've heard so many different people say in various fields, including this one in your field, that if you're not part of the good old boy society, so to speak, and, you know, in archaeology, it's just not really taken seriously. It's sort of taken with a grain of salt. Have you found any of that resistance from the field in what you're doing?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean,
yeah,
you know, again, it's all format, you know, tick the box type way of exploring these fabulous anomalous situations. And I actually think there should be room for, you know, what I call oblique lateral, which is, you know, it mainly seems to be amateur archaeologists and stuff that find so much more than the you know, the system people, so to speak. And you know, I'm not making a judgment. I'm not qualified to make a judgment on either, because, you know, I've made my living predominantly as a stone sculptor and person involved in ancient buildings and being around ancient sites. But I've got a certain feel for this over the years, and, you know, it's kind of working with other senses rather than just, you know, looking through old records and deciding that there's a site here. But, you know, they've got more resources than kind of us informal guys. But, you know, I think we are the guys that can make the baskets, so to speak. You know, we get the ball in the basket.
Yes. You've spent a lot of time, you know, with Clan Sinclair, right? Probably 6-7 years. And of course, everybody wants to know, everybody's been, you know, chasing this, I think, when it comes to the Grail. You know, what did the Templars find, do you think? The Ark, the Grail. I mean, the temple had been sacked, you know, a few times by the time the Knights got to it. What vibe do you get after working with Andrew?
Well, again, you know, he was, you know, very much a system academic, and I introduced areas to go down that as he got, you know, older. I mean, I knew him from the ages from when he was 60 right through to when he died, aged 85, I think it was.
Wow.
He started to look at, you know, what I call oblique lateral areas. And it's an area where, you know, it might be an intuitive sense. Many things are found like that. There's certain, you know, gifts, I guess, that people have got to be able to find things. I seem to have that without a doubt. You know, I can I can look at a site and just know that there's something there. I've done that several times, and I don't know how that works or how it happens, but it does. And I think, Andrew, by example, we were able to get a lot further into this by all these different streams, like with Shug Douglas, for instance, at Ballantradock, when he found those Templar tombstones. But the curious thing about those, just to show you how strange it is that in 2016, I ended up as the last informal keeper of the Noss Head Lighthouse Clan Sinclair Study Centre.
Wow.
In 2016.
Wow.
And when I was there, I've got the documents, actually, papers that were going to be thrown out. One of them, which was a radar scan from 2007, which actually showed the tombstones, but nobody had got as far as digging them or, showing them, excavating. It was Shug, by chance, who had been building this wall, that found them. And again, by chance, I'd worked with Shug in 1990 in Edinburgh for 2 years, So what were the chances of that? I mean, not only did we end up finding the tombstones themselves, we found previous evidence of Sinclair searches all over, not just Roslin Chapel, but Temple Ballantradock as well.
That's like all I could say is wow. It really is like it does leave you speechless just to think that by chance you find this. It's this amazing discovery.
I'm in awe.
No, seriously, yeah. I mean,
but back to your question. I mean, sorry to interrupt, but
that's okay, yeah.
the Temple Ballantradock tombstones, we'd gone over that already, but yeah. I actually think that the Templars, one of their things that they looked after, as their name would suggest, is they have the Ark of the Covenant. They were looking after it. They were looking after other treasures that they got in the Temple of Solomon of huge importance to mankind.
The keepers of knowledge.
Keepers of knowledge, and defenders of the faith, and the whole biblical legacy that we've inherited, merits much more investigation, and many people are involved in that. In any case,
No, I agree with you on that. I think there's a lot of information that was twisted. I always say, bastardized due to organization more than anything, picking and choosing what we should all know. Personal opinion. Don't shoot the messenger. There's a lot of people thinks just like me. Okay. As I know a lot of people listening. Okay.
I'm still learning.
Well, that's just it. I think it is all part of the journey. It's just a continuous journey of learning, discovery, but not being afraid to put it out there. I'm sure there's a lot of discoveries out there that people are leery to even bring forward. And I know the Templars were really got a bad rap, I guess is probably the best way to put it, because of a lot of misinformation, to the point where they were finally, vindicated, and doesn't make it any better, but I'm glad it happened. So, did they have the Ark of the Covenant? I don't know. There's a lot of theories with that there was more than one. There are theories that there's one in Ethiopia. There's theories that one was actually found, I think, in the 80s in Israel, like in Jerusalem. And you can actually see like photographs and video clips of this. And the person who found it was not allowed to excavate it. But it looked pretty darn compelling in that pit, let me tell you. So I don't know. Again, you look at the fact that, the Temple of Solomon had been sacked by the Babylonians, and that was a big one. They were said to have taken everything. Do you think that it was just merely these relics, or do you think that perhaps they were looking for knowledge, scrolls, writings? Because the Temple of Solomon was known for a lot of that also.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's you get into the areas of the writings of John the Baptist, and of course, at one point in time, the Templars were called Johnites.
Really, that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that as well. And it was like, where did that come from? And that whole connection to biblical history. In these moments of our world in crisis, we should be looking to these things as a harness, just in the same way as a foundation, just in the same way that other religions, revere their heritage and where they're from. We can't. We're in a world really that seems to be cut off from our fabulous heritage, and the thing in everybody, because we're so wrapped up in making a living, and we're on that constant treadmill, which is causing horrendous health problems for everybody. That connection with where we're from and all that stuff is of paramount importance, really, I think, to our mental health in knowing more about what we're about as humanity.
I agree with you. Amelia, do you have something to say?
No, I'm listening. I'm taking notes. I'm serious.
Okay, you look like you were going to say something.
I'm in a lecture hall in university. I'm enjoying this very much.
Yeah, it's very informative.
Very. I'm learning so much about it. Here I thought I knew some stuff, and I'm just in awe. I'm in awe at the sculpture of this gentleman. Who is that?
That's not quite finished, but I went off on an adventure in 2017 to South America, to Chile. And I was looking again by chance for other things down there as well. And it was mainly, all I was able to gather was myths and legends of seagoing folk that had arrived at Chile. But that was a portrait that I haven't finished it yet, but it's of a guy called Piloto Luis Pardo, who was actually the guy that rescued Ernest Shackleton's crew.
Oh, wow.
In Antarctica. Yeah. And
that's amazing.
Oh,
yeah. And, he's a true hero, this guy. And, the British government offered him, I don't know, a couple of £100,000 or something. And he said, no, this is my job and this is what I do. I'm already being paid from the Chilean government. And of course, obviously, Shackleton's crew loved him because he'd gone on this tug called Yelko to rescue them. And this portrait that I'm doing is for the Chilean embassy, but we don't know where exactly it's going to end up yet, but it could end up in the embassy itself.
So striking, so solemn, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice commemorative. I think it's, again, it's an honor to be asked to be able to contribute things like this. You did a really beautiful statue of Henry Sinclair.
Yeah, that was part of my work as sculptor to the Clan Sinclair. And it was actually a training project for young stonemasons as well. So it was two other guys came up with me to work on that. And it was all part of the Sinclair's initiative to try and kick in some heritage training for young people, and with, you know, using history as a tool to engage young people with.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we did that work for the study centre. It still exists up there, although the study centre doesn't, but the castle's nearby. I'm hoping at some point in time that whole Clan Sinclair thing will be, because they gave a major contribution to worldwide heritage, and it's still ongoing to some extent. And however, but we mustn't forget Sir James Gunn, of course, and of course he was one of Prince Henry Sinclair's captains. And although the Gunns, which was my clan, and the Sinclairs fought on some occasion, they were also very big allies in that period of time, that medieval period of time. And as a result of that, we've got, the Sir James Gunn effigy, which of course has caused some controversy worldwide. But again, that was a curious connection, because when my father was first officer on the Great Lakes, he was on a vessel called the SS Ontario Power, these were huge kind of 1970s vessels, the foremost of their time. Whilst he was on that, he fell down one of the holes, and father was a bit of a kind of a swashbuckler in many ways, and he ended up having a spinal fracture from this accident. He had his ear ripped off, which they found and stitched back. Jeepers. So every time he put sunglasses on, they kind of were tilted to one side extraordinarily.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Good grief.
And so I think he was in his 20s at the time, late 20s, and he went back. Obviously, he went back to sea after that, but he got a year and a half paid rehabilitation from a union in Canada. One of the things that he decided he wanted to do was paint, and he painted a portrait of himself, with this sort of ear stitched back on incorrectly. But he'd done himself as a knight, and again, he didn't know any of this history at the time. Because it was even well before I'd gone, and he painted himself as a Gunn clan knight without actually realizing it. It was with like a deer head on his chest, on his tunic.
Yes.
With this, and I've got the picture somewhere. And one of the symbols of the Gunn clan, and a particular branch, had this Wapiti head, as part of their heraldic symbolism. And what were the chances of that?
I'm going to see if I can actually send this to Joe. If you're listening, I do have the picture. If you can just bear with me, and I will send this and see if he can put that up. 1 second. It's got to load. You can keep talking. I'm just going to go ahead and get this.
I didn't realize you had it. That's fabulous.
Yes. Okay, 1 second. Okay. Joe, I've just sent you a picture. If you could please post it at your leisure. Okay, good. Okay, yeah. So that's actually, I found that to be really interesting, the story of your father, and the fact that he have this connection, to Canada, and you've spent time in the East Coast, I believe, yourself.
Yeah, Nova Scotia, Halifax, Nova Scotia. I lived there. Beautiful. Near Peggy's Cove for a bit. Oh, wow. And also I was in Newfoundland,
Oh, boy. Yeah, beautiful people in Newfoundland.
Yeah, no, they were great. I was at sea with them
people.
Fabulous, and a great haven for piracy as well in Newfoundland.
He's going to grab that picture there. Yeah, I just noticed it there.
Definitely.
Well, do you find, Nova Scotia to me has always been interesting. New Scotland, Acadia, all of these amazing places that you know, come from Scotland. It's got Highlands. Heck, we got Highlands here in Ontario, apparently. So,
Do we?
you know, yeah. So, okay, I
Wow.
think he's going to try to
So
put it up
much to
here.
learn.
I
Not
think there's
seeing
a
it.
connection. I think it was part of the same landmass as Scotland and the UK, Nova Scotia. Somehow, I think there's some connection, geophysical connection as well.
Black screen. So, yes. I don't know what that is. I'm just waiting for him to come back and notice that.
Oh, yeah.
So,
He switched. He's probably trying to just get it up there.
I was trying to move it. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I just copied and pasted it. So, so you spent time there, and did you do any searching, you know, for any sort of relics while you were here? Because I mean, even the Vikings were there. I mean, there's settlements, you know, throughout a good chunk of the East Coast, actually.
Well, obviously, you know, I continued to come back to both Canada and the USA, and there was that great book written, one of the really early books on all this stuff, Holy Grail Across the Atlantic, by a Canadian author. So we were both myself and my father were into that, and you know, I continued to return to the USA for quite a long time. Sometimes
There it is.
you know, every other year or something. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah.
There it is. Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect. Move it all
Yeah.
over. There we are.
Wow. Yeah.
So your dad did this one, and this was without knowing anything about basically the heritage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. And you know,
Tell
he
me that's
was
not like imprinting, like DNA,
yeah.
right?
I know. Yeah. No. It was just awesome, and he ended up working as a Jaguar car salesman as well as part of his rehabilitation, and within 2 years he was back at sea.
Wow. You can't keep him down.
No, you couldn't keep him down, and
That's amazing.
he was a real adventurer, and he'd been all over the world when you know, the Merchant Navy was a traditional thing. I mean, I have to tell you this story because to sort of cut in across here, but
Of course.
I was the SS Cape Breton Minor, which was a sister ship to the Ontario Power. The bosun on that was actually from Nova Scotia, who was called Norm Brion, and he always used to wear this sort of submariner's type cap that made him look like he should have been in World War II or something. But he was the brilliant seaman, the best seaman in the world from Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, without a doubt. But I was on the SS Cape Breton Minor learning knots, you know, different bowlines and different other things that, and some of the more elaborate knots. And the guys on the ship had kind of had not turned nasty, but they brought on an English sea captain, and he wasn't working with the crew. He seemed to be working against them. And there was a loud banging on my door, and this drunk guy, Newfoundlander, in a hard hat helmet liner that looked like he looked like a World War I pilot. He said to me, "Boy, are you with us or are you against us? Because we're going to take this ship over. We're going to mutiny. Are you with us?" And I said, frightenedly, "I'm with you. I'm with you." And they sort of stormed up onto the bridge, put the captain into his cabin, and they said, and we're all up there on the bridge, and they said, "What we're going to do and what we're going to do?" I said, "We're going to take this ship to Germany." You know, and they'd all been drinking rum and stuff, and I'm thinking, I can't believe this. I'm in a mutiny. It actually got downgraded officially as to an industrial dispute. But you can
Wow.
see where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
These were Newfoundlanders and Nova Scotias, and these guys were old school. And anyway, everything ended amicably, and so we went from the mutiny to an industrial dispute.
There you go. They're all natural born seamen on that coast.
That's it.
That's actually pretty funny. I know you're in modern times now. It's not a mutiny. Now this is a union thing. Fill out the form and talk to your union rep. So,
oh my gosh.
No, not like the good old days, unfortunately. But I love the story. So yeah, basically, then you will back up a little bit again. So you're spending time. You're in Canada. Were you even interested at that time in looking for relics? I mean, everything you did changed once you left Canada. So you said you were reading up on Templar stuff. Did you have any inkling that maybe perhaps if the Vikings came, that the Templars would have come?
No, it kind of came. It came later.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You pick certain things up and you retain them, and then you're not a 20-year-old or 21-year-old guy's not going to be talking about the Templars, when you're going uptown for a beer or whatever. And
no, I'm just wondering if you had done any explorations on your own. I mean, I know myself, just being a chick and all, but I mean, at that age, I was like heavily into archaeology and stuff like that. I just love exploring and trying to find anything really, especially indigenous stuff, because it's just everywhere.
Yeah, no, I did actually. I did a couple of earlier projects just at age 16 where you get like work experience working on archaeological digs, and I always found stuff. In fact, I found it was a Georgian crown that I brought over to Canada with me as a gift for my stepmother, who was Polish.
Wow.
And she got it made into a hasp, like some kind of a necklace. And she got that. Yeah, so there was that element really to my interests. But again, in the UK at the time, the education system is very biased. It chooses its favorites. Certain people have certain characteristics that they develop, and they sort of put the other people with different skills, creative skills particularly, they come second class really. And I guess this was part of the old system of what I was trying to get away from in the UK. And I ended up with a really good education in Canada. And also they instilled me with confidence and said, you can do these things. We're going to teach you to write properly. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I just absolutely lapped it up in Toronto. And later on, I went to university. But before that, I wanted the mechanics of learning to be a stone sculptor and stone carver. Through college, the operative skills. And then I realized that I could do the academic stuff as well to quite a high degree.
Excellent.
I have to say, did you just wake up, as a little guy, when you go to school and say, what do you want to be when you grow up? A stone sculptor is not something that most kids say, I want to do.
It comes right after firemen.
Yeah, right. Like what inspired you or prompted you to want to go down this path?
I don't, I can't fully answer that. Only that when I was making things, I seemed to be happy. It was like a continuation of being in a world of your own.
Yes.
And it was, I was sick and tired of being told by the system, teachers in the system, that I wasn't going to amount to much.
Mm.
And I thought,
That always happens.
I guess that happens to a lot of people, but
Yeah.
I just thought, I'm gonna do what I want in this world and make a good contribution to it creatively,
Mm-hmm.
And you always find that with all people that have done really well in various ways, they've always had this sort of a bit of a chip on their shoulder to spur them on. And I think we need to look at how the education system works, so that we can be motivated and getting the best out of all different types of people,
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. It's just a very unusual career path, and you're amazing at it because, I've seen some of the stuff that you've done. I'm just like mind blown, because it takes a lot of patience, a lot of resilience. It's not like, you can just draw and I'm just going to erase this because it's not working out the way I want. Or, working with clay where you can sort of remodel it. I mean, it's a lot of dedication. It's a lot of hard work.
Yeah. And it was, I felt like I was swimming upstream, but maybe that was a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up with that ram, which is one of the largest stone carvings in the north of England.
That's beautiful.
It was unveiled by HRH, the Prince of Wales and stuff.
It's beautiful.
That was a real yardstick or marker in my path. And
absolutely.
But I'd actually, I was thinking, I always look back onto to the great sculptors of the past. I followed Michelangelo and Donato and various Italian sculptors. Bernini did the Angels on the Bridge of Angels in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started reading about another sculptor called Antoine Bourdelle.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going right back now to 1984 when I'd finished college. And I'd done some work on Carlisle Cathedral and stuff, and that was good for the masonry skills and how to handle stone and tools and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody told me about Josephine de Vasconcelos, who was a very famous lady sculptor in her time. And I thought, I wonder if I could, because Bourdelle had been the assistant sculptor to Rodin, and she'd been the assistant sculptor to Bourdelle. And I thought, well, if I can become the assistant sculptor to her, and especially with her being a female, she'd had to go through, so much persecution in the system to make it as a top sculptor. I thought, well, that might give me what I need to persist, against all odds. Right. And I ended up working with her for, several years. And I actually received the last letter that she ever wrote to anybody when she died, aged 100.
Wow.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I kind of got her out of retirement almost. And then she went on to do some of the biggest sculptures after the age of 80,
That's amazing.
One that was sponsored by Richard Branson called Reconciliation, that was mentioned in the Queen's speech in 2014, which is outside Coventry Cathedral. Wow. Well, that's a great symbol of forgiveness, with all the horrors that mankind perpetrates on each other. And there was that side to her, you see. And she was also a great activist for justice, and took on major political figures in many ways, just because she had that kind of confidence and from where she'd come from, so it was a great combination. There's me coming from like the roughy tufty Great Lakes seaman stuff to meeting a very refined older lady, but yet she had so much massive inner spiritual strength that I was able to learn from myself and realize that, it wasn't about physical prowess. It wasn't about that thing that gets you through life. It's about that mental strength. And she used to say to me with a very kind of posh accent, she used to say, "You may think it's a garden inside my soul to some extent, Shawn," she said, "but actually it's rock. It's as hard as rock in there, And that was the way she described herself.
So it's like one tough cookie.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You mentioned, oh, sorry.
No, carry on, please.
No, this is more of a personal thing. I've been holding out the whole time. You mentioned Michelangelo, and Michelangelo used to say that he would look at marble and it would speak to him. Michelangelo actually apprenticed with my 10-time great grandfather, who was Nicola Pisano.
Wow. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's really amazing to hear you speak, because I've never been able to speak to, no one in my family carried that on. So thank you for that. It's great to hear. Gives me an opportunity to understand what he may have felt when he sculpted Pisa.
Yeah. Again, the depth of his knowledge of stone and marble and his connection to God. I mean, he's a guy that would rather sleep at the foot of his statue than go to bed,
Yes.
And then wake up next day, throw a bucket of water over himself and continue hammering away. So great was his connection to God, but through the material. And was able to be one of the greatest producers of art the world's ever seen. There's no doubt about that. And similarly, Leonardo da Vinci, on his deathbed, this is a man that could bend horseshoes as well as create some of the most genius ideas known on the earth at the time, and such a forward thinker that, so humble on his deathbed, he says to God, "Have I done enough?" These are the figures we should be extolling in the virtues of in this decaying world that we're in.
Well, the people of their time were so epic when you look back. I mean, my great-grand had Michelangelo there. Galileo was the first to be baptized in that baptistry. Fibonacci is an uncle. You think about these people and you can't speak that way nowadays about anyone.
No.
There isn't that art isn't what it was at one time.
This is all stuff that transcends time.
It does. Right? Well, absolutely. I mean, I can always go to Pisa and touch it and feel, his work. Knowing that he had Da Vinci and Michelangelo as apprentices is just mind-blowing for me. But that is incredible.
That's a fabulous connection, and
I can't
so good
draw,
that you're
Shawn.
You're picking up on that.
I can't draw, Shawn. I can't draw. I can't paint.
Stick people.
Yeah, I can cook. That's my art. I think people. I can paint, but I can't.
No, paint by numbers, maybe.
I wish I could. It goes throughout the generations of family, with musicians that way and poetry and things like that. But yeah, none of us, they're wood sculptors, but they're not with stone.
No, that's a dying art, I think. And when you travel, like I say, I am a world traveler, and I've always been drawn to architecture, and I love spending time in castles and cathedrals because of the workmanship there.
energy.
It's just, I mean, to me, stone resonates. It has an energy. You can almost hear it. You can feel it, and that's just me seeing it after the fact. I often wonder, am I picking up on the energy maybe of the person who created the piece or the building, or,
Yeah. No, I one of my roles is working with another big heritage champion in the UK called the Gorton Monastery, and they're going to be investigating resonance qualities of stone in context to music and frequency, which is interesting because I got involved with a book with Andrew Sinclair regarding that as well, and ended up creating and I'm not musical in any way at all, but for some reason I was prompted to make this stone lyre. It's the only one in the world, and it was strung by Oxford University medieval music department.
Wow.
And this thing plays.
Wow.
So where that's going to lead, I do know. I know that it's going to be very interesting. On we were involved in working out the effects of myself and Andrew frequency on human consciousness in temple structures, for instance.
Wow. Yes.
Whether that operates through the geometry of the building or the shape of it, but more importantly, I think the stone. And so this is something I'm trying to get published as well. The book is nearly finished, although I'm adding some extra bits to it that we were going to put in any case. That's called the temple builders, and it actually refers quite a lot to the Templars, and their heritage, of course, in stone is Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, who formed the Templars originally. He was also involved in setting up or using medieval craft guilds and bringing them into the Templar order. And I was amazed to find out that some of the Templar Masons had taken the same vows as the knights, chivalrous values, which are more or less pledged to God unto death. And we know that they were involved in, the early cathedral buildings, and through one guy was called a Cistercian brother called Achard, was appointed by Bernard of Clairvaux to train masons in Germany, for instance. So they knew the importance of sacred building in stone. And again, this is a conduit with the Templars that it's got to be re-explored, because so much of what they did has been maligned because of what happened. That we're missing these areas of vital interest to humanity.
I agree with you. I'm a big believer in frequency, how everything resonates with the essence. There's a place in the US, I will try to dig it up for you if you haven't heard of it, but it's near a waterfall. It's called the Singing Stones. And people can go and tap on different stones. These are big rocks, and they can tap on them, and they all have different frequencies to them.
Beautiful.
It's like it's like a natural wonder. It's not like, and somebody happened upon it. And I remember seeing it in a documentary, and I said, this is fascinating. But there is a belief that stone can, again, absorb energy, and it can retain it like a memory.
I'd heard that as well. Yeah. And we mentioned in the book that the BBC had done some tests similarly in the 80s, I think it was, and somehow plugged in magnetic tape recording equipment into the stones of a certain church.
Wow.
How they did that, the technical aspects, I don't know, but what they actually recorded was thousands and thousands of voices.
Huh,
like
really?
over time. Yeah, like over time, but it was just like a babble, of
imprints.
Yeah, of
Memory.
people's voices that had been recorded somehow in the stone. So bang on with what you said, yeah.
That is just so amazing to me.
Exciting.
If that is indeed a thing, you look at some of the Templars going into their, to these temples that they had, these places of resonance. I can just imagine what you would catch in there. I think it's fantastic. Like I say, no matter where I go, I always feel compelled to put my hands on stone, whether it be a statue, whether it be a building, because I just feel that it resonates and that they really do speak. So to be able to work on something like that, and you're putting your own energy into it, and it leads me to think, because we had Carl and Hamilton on prior, and they were speaking about different artifacts that they had from the Tomar Horde, and some of these made out of stone, and it makes you wonder, the time that was put into it and the intention of creating this and what it was going to be used for. It would be so interesting to do an experiment on that, much like some of the items that you're creating, some of these pieces of artwork. If they could speak, like, what are your thoughts? Are your thoughts imprinting on them while you're creating them?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. And, I think it's also kind of a conduit also for other stuff coming through it, because, it's not when, people are buried and they say ashes to ashes, dust to dust. It's, I think we have a lot of mineral content in the human body that is in stone as well. But the obsidian chalice and the fabulous ones that the guys have got, that was almost an overload of information for me when I held it.
I can imagine.
This thing to be carved from obsidian is, again, for me, supernatural. They find these types of things in pyramids and ancient cultures and civilizations, and how the Templars managed to get these chalices and where they were worked is still, for me, a mystery.
What was it, like 7 years to do the obsidian chalice? I think is what they said, 7 years to carve this. I can't even imagine, like, the dedication, because it's just so difficult to carve.
Well, that was one possibility, one possible theory.
Right.
I still think there's stone carving or working techniques that have been lost, that we don't know enough. We've gone away from those ancient traditions of how they were able to work stone. But I did find when I was working in Edinburgh, this old, it was an old priest actually, and he had a book on how they would carve stone statues from very hard sandstone. It was like in the 1500s, and
wow.
So it was like it was illustrated with that they used to soften the stone for maybe 2 weeks before they carved it. So they would have a container of water that would be constantly dripping on the stone, so it would be fully saturated. And somehow that this it softened it, And I've noticed that with stone, it can go from being harder and softer at the same time. I'm working on a piece now that's, since I've started to carve it, gone through the surface. It started soft, and as it's been exposed to the air, it's growing harder, you know. So there's all sorts of technical things going on with it that may perhaps we've lost in terms of technique. But when I did a bit of forgery analysis in London with a couple of galleries that were selling antiquities, and based on just what you've just said then about this feel that you get from stone, yes, I seem to be able to tell instinctively what had been forged. You know, yes, there was the idea about, you know, the tool marks and how that's ascertained, but there's also the idea that, you know, if something's not pure and from the heart and somebody's put love into it, where rather than this is something that's going to be for money to fool somebody, there's a different feeling with it. Eh?
Yes, I agree.
7 stones that I was looking at with this chap, I got 5 of them right. So based on that, 5 out of 7 wasn't too bad, really.
That's pretty good odds.
That was my test.
That's pretty good odds. We'll give it to you. So it must have been a mind-blowing experience for you walking into, like, I'm sure you see it all over the place. But Rosalind, as a sculptor, as an artist, as someone who works with stone very personally, you know, up close, personal, it must have been quite an experience for you. What did you make of all of that?
Yeah, well, I've been there so many times, and
I guess, yeah. I'm just like, well, that's just nice. I relished it, and I had a few hours.
But it's overload. You know, it's every inch of it is ornately carved with various symbols, and seems to be like a Bible in stone, but it actually has got like this the Celtic idea of Christianity, that and there's some other beliefs in there as well, but there's a combination of like styles. That there's all sorts going on in Rosslyn, and you know, Nordic cultures, all fusion, everything that people were thinking about, I think, at the time.
The spirals remind me of DNA sequence. It's like a very advanced, you know.
On the Apprentice pillar.
Yeah.
Well, that was Crick and Watson, of course, and that Andrew Sinclair had said that. But I made models of how that Apprentice pillar was put together, and I think it was actually finished off in situ. So what they used to do was to make, if the quarry was 5 miles away, which in the case of Rosslyn it was.
Right.
I think there's a couple of different types of stone there, in actual fact. But in order to lighten it, they would carve something at the quarry or rough it out. And they had rough masons that did that. And then it was it was carted to site. Brilliant. And then it would be, you know, the William Sinclair or one of the master masons would create templates for the masons and carvers to work on. But the denomination on any cathedral at the time was that the premium craftsman was the stonemason, the master mason, and then the stonemason. The subordinate one was the stone carver, because he did all the elaborate carving, but none of the geometric stone cutting, so to speak, the mathematical engineering in stone. And that's how the Masons Craft Guilds sort of originated, was to protect that knowledge of engineering in stone, so to speak. And then the embellishers were the carvers, were a different denomination of, they weren't far behind the Masons, but it was just that there was a system in play at Roslin, and I can see it. I can see how, the apprentice pillar, for instance, was there's several stones involved in its makeup, and it's very complex geometry in actual fact, because it's a complete 3D version of a synthesis between a square and circular helical geometry.
It's genius.
Yeah, so inside you've got like a square shape, but without the corners, and then you've got the rope, which you mentioned, the DNA sequence stuff, going up the outside of the spherical surface to create the pillar itself. And there may be something in the legend of the apprentice pillar, and is him going to the master going to Rome and then returning to find out that the apprentice had done the job without him, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a fascinating place. Can you, just for those listening who are in awe of it but know nothing of it, do you know when construction began, when it was completed?
Yeah, I think, well, roughly it was, I think, from 1450 and completed around 1480, but we don't know the exact dates.
Right.
That's another thing.
I only ask because it's got, you see some North American, like corn, for one.
Yeah.
There's little hints in there that you see that would have come in from Henry Sinclair's journey, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. Case in point, and the aloe vera and all these things that could only be seen in North America and further afield. So they'd already had that experience of being there. We know that from 1398, and prior to that, I believe the Sinclairs, who were actually Vikings in any case, descendants, that the Vikings had been going to North America consistently probably for 200 years prior to that, and probably other seagoing cultures like the Phoenicians and other groups, that were there, Portuguese, Spanish fishermen that obviously off the coast of Newfoundland, they were still there when I was over there. It was a big thing to see Portuguese fishing boats over on the Grand Banks and stuff.
I think it's like amazing. I do. I thought I read something at one point where I think it was back, I don't know, was it 1300s, maybe before, where the Chinese actually attempted to come in. They had a fleet of about 300 ships at one time that tried to make a journey.
Yeah, I think there was lots of exploration going on over the world, and this points to the other area of research that I was involved in was through the work of Charles Hapgood and maps of the ancient sea kings.
Yes.
Which of course Piri Reis had that map that showed the landmass under Antarctica before there was ice. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that stimulates people to, continue to be interested in the planet. It's so, we know so little about these geophysical anomalies and stuff that it's like a human condition to want to search out these mysteries.
I agree. I think people have always been completely in awe or infatuated with, faraway places. I know whenever I was asked to do a television show, it's just like, what would your ideal show be, to present to people? And I always say, you know what, something that takes them out of their living room, because some people never leave the confines of their town, their state, maybe, their country. I said something that gives them an experience that allows them to be an explorer for even a half an hour a week, and those are the type of shows. I personally love documentaries. They're my favorite. I want to also, even though I've been able to escape to many parts of the world, I still enjoy sitting down with a good documentary that takes me somewhere else with something that I enjoy, which to me, it's usually, like archaeological adventure shows and just things like that. I'd love to see how things work.
Yeah, and I agree entirely with you. And that's how I tried to improve myself when I was in my younger days, was by watching those National Geographic documentaries and stuff, and all that stuff. And I think it's in the heart of every person that they've got this desire to know more. And it's not just enough to be on this treadmill system of I know we have to make a living and all the rest of it, or do our best in that direction, but we've got to be stimulated in other ways, I think, to get a real value of what this magnificent, beautiful planet is about.
A thirst for knowledge, a quest for adventure.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you seem to have been able to hit on everything. In your travels, in your Templar research, where has it taken you aside from North America and obviously home, the UK?
Brazil. I was in Brazil.
Yeah.
I was picking up on stuff, and of course, Kathleen Ball's work is incredible. And I've been around all these different groups of people and writers that have been involved in this, and there were some great forums in Edinburgh where we had some of the foremost writers involved, and including the fabulous Templar historian Robert Bryden, that was a Rosslyn Chapel expert to some extent. I was at lectures that he was, giving way back in 2000, and it's just been a pleasure to be amongst people in the audience and be a part of all that and grow with it. And we get the books and we do the knowledge, and we then do our own thing in our own way. And Chile, for me, the adventure I had in Chile was just incredible. And it's all these areas of the world that you think nobody's been to. You suddenly, it's like Louis Cerner's find in Arizona, I think it is, New Mexico, with the marker stones. That, to me, I was asked to do some analysis on those, and you've got Templar symbols on these stones. Amazing. Nobody knows where they're leading, but oddly, when I checked into Andrew Sinclair's book, The Secret Scroll, which shows how the Ark of the Covenant moved through the Middle East, actually, I think that's how the Ark of the Covenant moved through to North America. I think it's
I like the sounds of that.
The Secret Scroll, which is in the Orkneys, that he calls the Secret Scroll, actually very, very similar to the carvings on Louis Cerner's find in New Mexico. And to me, I think one of the ideas that I came up with was that these stones came as ballast from Scotland. They used a lot of wooden ships at the time. They would carry stone as ballast there, and so it's not without reason that you would think that perhaps those stones have been carved already in Scotland and transported as ballast over to North America. New Mexico.
That's fascinating. That is fascinating. I never would have even thought about that, to be honest. I mean, there's all kinds of different monuments. Even, if you go into Rhode Island and you see the windmill, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I don't want to stray too much into that because I know that's a whole other show, but what are your thoughts on that being this amazing, stone monument?
Well, I like to try and be hands-on and analyze the materials and do analysis of that, and that can be done to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
But Andrew Sinclair in his film measures, goes over to the tower, measures it, and the measurement level was, I think it's called a Scottish L, which is different to a yard, for instance. And he shows how this was a Scottish measurement system, that how the tower was built. And it does have it could have actually, you could see that on the Orkneys or north of Scotland, the building techniques are absolutely identical,
Mm-hmm.
And what was it? Was it a lighthouse? Was it, people have called it the windmill, but I definitely think it's got the connection, the Templar connection there somehow. Because of course they were involved in building a lot of this stuff,
I agree. And also because even going down along the East Coast, there are believed to be markers that show them coming through, so you sort of have to give it some credit. I think you just have people who are afraid to go there again because it goes against the grain of what the written word is, historically speaking, when it comes to North America. But
yeah, and a lot of the early research that the Sinclairs did from Nosshead Lighthouse, the Sinclair Study Centre, was exactly that, and was trying to rediscover those narratives, the Zeno brothers narrative, and the connection to North America. Then it's all coming back. I think it's not going to go away because they keep finding things, and of course that's the interesting, the next step or the genesis from all the information I've been gathering was to sort of help Wayne Murphy and Gretchen Cornwall and connect lost relics as well. And I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to work with lost relics, as you know, in Scotland.
Yes.
And it's like, hey ho, we're all on the cart again. Here we go. We're off on the quest, and it'd be good to open that up to more people, I think, as well in the future. At least in forums and podcasts and audiences, and it's important work. It's let's put it this way. It's a lot more interesting than looking at bar charts of, what other countries have that people could exploit. As I remember at school when we have we're going to study the bar charts of the resources of Africa. What's that about? That's
and why?
Well, yeah, why?
It's like algebra. What? Why?
Yeah, I mean, it's
I'm 15.
Exactly. It's a leftover from the days of the empire, isn't it? And it's this is the way to go forward, I think, in connecting, modern European peoples and to like the Templars did with their probable interaction with natives, and I think that was very successful, as recorded through the myths of the native Micmacs.
I agree with you, Amelia.
Thank you, Michelle. Shawn, how do you feel? Do you think that they'll still be at Oak Island 20 years from now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have to say that when I was in Canada, Oak Island it's been a big thing for many years. We know all the people that were previously involved in the excavation there. And there's definitely a mystery there that's almost supernatural in essence. And the intrigue that revolves around it is just incredible. But I think it's going to take kind of like a genius to get to grips with a way in there somehow that's not seen at the moment. I think maybe they've got to go through all the conventional ways to actually eventually arrive at the oblique lateral, shall we say, way of finding out more. And they have a huge audience, as we know. And when I was in Canada on the eastern seaboard and stuff, it was always intrigue and big news, and everybody knew about it. Everybody was talking about it, but I guess it is what it is, and I'm focused to some extent in taking the quest with other people, with the team. Great to work with Wayne Murphy and his Mohican connection is just, for me, that's the stuff I wanted to learn about at school, and to have that opportunity is just, I'm totally honoured by that, and it's a dream come true in many ways.
Yeah, I think it is a wonderful experience because, the Indigenous people hold so much oral history. There's so much information if you just ask, because they're very forthcoming with it. And when I think of Oak Island, and I'm, because they're just finishing up another season, I find it just as thrilling to see all of the archaeological finds. When they found that road in the swamp, I'm like, wow, yeah, I knew it was there. It's stuff like that. Of course, it would be great to see them find, the treasure that they're seeking, because it's been ongoing for 200 bloody years. But everything they're finding along the way, to me, is giving so much, so much insight into what the island was like and the different stages through the centuries of what it was doing. It's an amazing journey that I'm glad that they're sharing with everyone. And I think that your team, Templin North America, is going to do the same thing. I really do, because it's a story that needs telling.
Yeah, the good thing is the approach. You've got to have people that are willing to take on board, opinions and look at it as helpful and combining to the greater good in many ways. I saw, particularly around Roslin, I saw lots and lots of people involved in the Roslin stuff and the quest, and quite often it ended up clouded. I used to sit back because I was, I didn't always like to speak out and stuff, and I had my own ideas and I tried to keep them to myself. I was always a bit frightened I was going to get shot down by highfalutin academics and stuff like that, and I just kind of carried on quietly, moving towards my goals, and saw this big thing called ego destroy many groups.
Yes.
And the casualties of Roslin are a legend, to be honest. It draws that type of place draws people in, but you have to have a healthy respect for God and ask counsel because we don't know exactly what's in the vaults there. We don't know the purpose of the building. I mean, Jeff Nisbet, for instance, a fabulous writer that was what I call old school writer. His works in various magazines and journals. One of his theories was that the roof of Rosslyn actually has a connection to astronomical alignments, and that it, as actually do quite a lot of temple structures. This is how they encoded information about, how there is a kind of a combination or relationship between God and the planet and the geophysical nature of the planet, and that when we do certain things on this planet and we go against that somehow, that balance throws the Earth into misalignment, shall we say? And you've got the deluge theory, you've got all these things that can happen that we need to have more knowledge about.
No, I agree. I mean, if you even go back to the time of the Gnostics, they were well versed in the stars. The Egyptians were versed, in stars, the Aztecs, the Mayan. I mean, it only stands to reason the Templars, as keepers of knowledge, would have done the same thing, Do you think, I mean, the Sinclairs were a Templar family, do you think that the secrets lie within Rosslyn, whether it be within its architecture or in its vaults?
Yeah, I think there's something that definitely it has that feeling of shivers down your spine, and
it does.
There's so much more to come from Rosslyn. But the guy that monopolized on its interest in a key way, of course, was Dan Brown. In terms of, but that will pale in significance to what is to come, I think.
Is it research still ongoing?
Yeah, I think there's research that's still ongoing. There's more information that's been researched that is not being released, and equally as much to do with the information encoded in Rosslyn in the stone carving.
Yes.
We go on obviously to the lost and sacred hymn to John the Baptist, which presumably in the cubes in the retro chapel, of course, which is as a stone, say, with my stonemason's hat on, you just don't see that configuration of architectural carving anywhere else with cymatic symbols on the cubes. We know that the cubes were altered as well.
That's interesting.
Later, and in the Victorian times. And oddly enough, again, I haven't mentioned this, but this is something else I found at Noss Head Lighthouse. This is really creepy. And it was a Victorian brochure. I've got it as well. Like a tour guide of Rosslyn Chapel. This was when it was, in a ruinous state to some extent. And in it describes, you see, there is the entrance to Rosslyn in the front, which is like a portico carved in stone, is actually Victorian. And it has the four symbols of the evangelists around the outside. I always used to look at those and think, that kind of reflects the feel of the carvings inside Rosslyn. But I didn't know too much about it. And then I realized that it was actually a Victorian extension. And of course, the statues have been removed from Rosslyn. that was where a lot of the real information was encoded, and they were taken down. And they said, "Oh, wait, well, you know, it was to protect them from the iconoclasts. Nobody knows where they're going." But I think there was 113 statues that had been removed from Rosslyn itself and hidden somewhere. No, but again, this is another mystery. But back to the Victorian portico. So we've got these statues on the outside, which are there, carved later in the Victorian period, and then you've got a beautiful Madonna and Child inside. And I thought, well, I wonder who did those. And lo and behold, whilst I'm at Noss Head Lighthouse, the Sinclair Study Centre again, working on a local sheep farm in the morning and doing some carving in the afternoon. You know, I'd gone up there 6 months. I'd kind of fallen on hard times to some extent, and I ended up in the refuge of the lighthouse itself before it was sold on. And I found this brochure, and in it was these words. It was that those statues on the portico and the one inside were done by a sculptor, Victorian sculptor called Francis John Williamson. Can you believe that?
Yes, I can. I don't believe in coincidences. Just saying.
So, and this guy is actually very, very distantly related, you know, and that's not even something I'd want to be connected with, because he's so far-fetched. People think I was a wingnut or something, but it's the truth. And
I think it's fantastic. I'd be all over that.
Yeah. So there was that as well. That was an additional thing that I found from that. And then, you know, my father had come over, and he started this study of the sequential stuff on the cubes, and of course it was much developed later on by musicians and people involved in working out what they were. There's quite a lot of people say, well, it wasn't the lost and sacred hymn to John the Baptist. To me, that has the ring of truth, and the music is just phenomenal when you listen to it. Send you into another realm, really. But the cymatics that they must have had knowledge for, you know, anybody can realize that hints at a greater meaning for Rosslyn, you know. And I think we're just scratching the surface, you know. I just think it's encoded there is, you know, so much lost information about the Templars and what they were involved in.
So the Sinclairs are still actively researching or bringing in people to, you know, give it their shots, I guess. I know that you have a lot of people, you know, going in there always trying to work out all these codes, and that seems to be like the story that never ends, because I don't think they can figure it out. But just to reiterate, they have no clue where these statues are. They're just gone.
They're just gone, really. I did hear that they had gone to the coast at some point in time. Other people have said that they're actually in the vaults. Nobody knows. But we're talking about fairly large size statues and sculptures that were taken down from niches that I think represents another version of Christianity to some extent, and gnosis, knowledge, and some connections, whatever, that probably in 17, there is an illustration of some of them that I found from 1700, and I think that's around the time that they were removed. But you know, I
don't know. Vatican sort of rings with me. Vaults down there might have them.
Like, Mary, where are you? Yeah.
Just saying, all the good stuff seems to end up over there. But we'll leave
probably
that right there.
Next to John J. Alighieri's books. But
yeah, we'll just leave that right there and just not create like a whole anarchy with this show. But before we go, please tell everybody how to find you, what you have coming up, how to get your book.
Yeah, well, I'd certainly like to communicate with anybody that wants to communicate. Of course, that's the idea with Team Templar and the same, Lost Relics of the Knights Templar. We're people organized, people centric, I should say, and this is about everybody, not just people who seem to be leading. This is about everybody's interest to that extent. But yeah, I've got the Questus coming up, which actually is a novel that's carrying all the information, all the factual information disguised as fiction, and that will be out later in summer. I'm just getting it edited and stuff, and the Evidence of Knight Templar Tombstones, which is kind of an academic report which describes all the Templar tombstone findings and, finishes off the work that Andrew Sinclair started. That's actually being edited now as well. I'm not in any rush to get them out before the end of summer. Mm-hmm. And, they've got to be right. And, I want them to help the whole process of what's happening. But, if you can Google Shawn Williamson sculptor, I'm out there, or I can send you you've got my email address. Anybody who wants to contact me by email can. Mm-hmm. That would be cool. Yeah.
Excellent. I like it. And he's also on Facebook, which he's just not mentioning.
Oh yeah, Facebook as well.
Thought I'd just put that out there. Right, since like half the world, if not most of it, is on Facebook. So, but thank you so much for joining us. I know it's very late for you, and I'm I was just so happy that you came on board. Honestly, it was just so informative, and it's just always a pleasure, chit-chatting with you. But now face to face is really nice also.
Yeah.
I've learned so much.
What can I say? Sorry?
I said I've learned so much. I've taken so many notes. I have pages and pages.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank you for asking me to be on the show. And you guys are doing a great job. And
thank you.
I'd love to come back sometime, and I'll keep you posted with everything that's going on.
Yeah, well, you actually are scheduled to be back a few times.
So, I know.
We like you that much, so yeah.
Maybe after the pandemic, we can meet in Pisa.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll go for that, yeah. And,
there we go. World traveling. Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Finish that last Michelangelo beer,
There we go. If there's beer involved, I'm there. So I think Carl's already nailed down some pubs. So.
Oh my gosh. That's all he posts pictures of right now, poor guy.
I know. It's like, come on. I know how he feels. I'm feeling it. So. So, but thank you very much for joining us, and always a pleasure. And until the next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Great stuff.
Thank you for staying up for us.
No problem. Yes. Been a pleasure.
Thank you, Shawn.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Well, we've come to another awesome segment here on the Outer Realm, and we'd like to thank everybody who tuned in and everybody who was in chat. Big thank you to Shawn Williamson. Just such a pleasure. Thank you to Joe Montaldo for acting like the wizard behind the scenes with all the pictures and such. Please remember to stop by UFO Paranormal Radio and subscribe. And while you're at it, head on over to Facebook on the Outer Realm and follow us on Instagram. Don't forget, tomorrow night, continuing on with Templar Week, Dr. Kathleen Ann Ball returns here to the show, and we'll be discussing all of her updates on her discovery of the Knights Templar Cave in Brazil that predates Christopher Columbus. You can find the show on Gaia. This thing is up for tons of awards and has already won. So if you haven't seen it yet, get yourself out there and watch it. Honestly, because then it's all going to make sense when you hear her talk tomorrow. So thank you, everyone. Good night, behave, and we'll see you tomorrow evening. Good night.